Hey guys, so have you ever had one of those jobs that you get out there in the garden to start doing it and then you see something that probably should be done first, and so you do that, and that ends up being way bigger than the job you had originally come out for? That's what happened to me a couple days ago. So I had 3 lavender plants and they actually came up volunteer here, which is kind of a cool thing to have happen. But in the front yard last year when we moved in, the bed that is now our seasonal bed that we had our Christmas display in and now we have the summer display in, it was just pretty much a full bed of lavender that was kind of in different stages of death. It was just, you know, kind of neglected and sitting there. So we pulled it all out to prepare the bed to do something different. And then this spring, when I was planting our summer display, I noticed several seedlings of lavender that were coming up volunteer. And so I gently potted them up and took care of them over the summer. And now I'm going to plant them in the ground. They've made nice little plants. But I came out here into our Mediterranean herb garden, and I noticed that we had this lavender. I don't even know what kind it is. It was a plant that was here when we moved in. It's so overgrown. It needed major cutback. There was another plant next to it that I love that I really need to find the name of because I do not see it anywhere in nurseries, and my plant identifier didn't work on that either. But I'm keeping them both because I love them. They've got that great silvery foliage. The lavender actually has a lemon scent to the leaves, and then the flowers actually smell like lavender. So I thought I really need to cut those back first, and maybe I'll plant the new lavender kind of in that vicinity once I've gotten these a little more under control. Then when I finished cutting those back, and that was a big job, you know, and for this kind of plant, there's really no rhyme or reason. I wanted them much smaller, and I wanted all the dead out. And so I really just started hacking and cut them way back till they were about a third or maybe a quarter of their original size. And with both of these, it's going to be fine. They're going to grow back in no time. But then I started looking around at the oregano and the sage and the thyme, and I figured those needed kind of a haircut too. So just the same, you know, if you have, you know, Mediterranean herbs that are perennial and you live in a climate where they can overwinter, then you want to tidy them up a couple of times a year. And most of the time you want to just cut them back by a third or a half, just to neaten them up. That's really all they need. And so I did that with the sages and the thyme. The oregano, I kind of just cleaned up around the edges because it was starting to bloom, and the bees love oregano flowers, and I figured this time of year they need all the flowers they can get. So I'll go in and tidy that up once those flowers have faded, but right now giving the bees some enjoyment. And then when I had all that done, I noticed that this big blue hibiscus behind me, you can barely see the edge right there, it had gotten so overgrown. I cut it way back, probably last fall, which in most places you shouldn't do, but here, and with this being such an established plant, I knew I could get away with it. And I did. It grew back like crazy. And so I figured while I'm at it, I've got the hand pruners out, let's just keep going with the cleanup. And I took this big bushy plant back probably by at least a third. And then I remembered what I had come out here for in the beginning, to plant the lavender. And so where I was going to plant the lavender, it actually ended up being better that I did all this work, because I realized these other plants are going to grow back again so quickly that to put more lavender in that area, it's just going to all get kind of choked out and they're all going to blend together. And in this Mediterranean herb garden, I kind of wanted the plants separated. Just for aesthetics, we're going to put a nice tan gravel mulch in, and so I just think that's going to make it look a lot cleaner and nicer. And so I decided to put the 3 lavender just across the path from that, on the wall between the Mediterranean herb garden and our vegetable garden, or what will be the vineyard, in a year or so. So I wanted to walk you through kind of planting lavender, and it does have some specific requirements that need to be met in order for it to thrive. First off, lavender do not like wet roots. They like dry roots, almost bone dry, you know, with a little bit of moisture every now and again. But really you want lavender to be on the dry side most of the time. Nothing will kill a lavender faster than its feet sitting in wet. So when you're planting lavender, you need to remedy that problem up front. If you have poor draining soil like clay, or if you have a lot of organic matter, they don't like that either. So you want to add any type of material in that is going to help with that drainage. Sand, perlite, even some gravel deep down underneath there that can get the water out of that area as quick as you can once it's been watered. Now my preference is sand. It's cheap, it's readily available, and you can mix it in both down, so dig the hole twice as deep and wide as the pot you're putting in there, and mix some sand in around on the bottom, maybe even some gravel if you've got really poor drainage. And then as you're backfilling around the pot or the plant, you can also mix some sand in there as well. Now fortunately, in this area I don't need to do that because there's actually quite a bit of decomposed granite in the soil already, so it's very well draining. It's also up kind of almost like on a raised bed. It's on the edge of a retaining wall, and so the drainage there is going to be superb and perfect for lavender. Now if you've got a soil that is so heavy that no amount of sand is going to remedy the drainage as much as lavender would need, maybe some regular plants would be fine, but lavender again need perfect drainage. And if you don't have that, lavender grow very well in raised beds or containers, and so you don't have to give up growing lavender just because you have really heavy soil. Another fix is if you really want them in the ground, you can mound up the soil and plant the lavender on top of that mound, and that way any rainwater or overhead irrigation will kind of hit that mound and roll off down to the soil below it, and that'll kind of help keep that soil just right around the root ball on the dry side. Going back to what I said about organic matter, don't add that to the soil. You don't want to add any type of what you would consider health to the soil, because lavender want dry, they want barren, they want some of the worst conditions that you can possibly think of, and that's where they're going to thrive. They thrive on neglect. They really do. They thrive on neglect. In terms of fertilizer, they don't need much of that either. In the spring, I will give them just probably one feeding for the entire year of just an all-purpose organic fertilizer, and they're pretty much good to go. That just helps them get off to a good start, get the blooms going. But other than that, throughout the year, fertilizer-wise, pretty easy. In terms of watering, pretty much goes without saying, they don't need much. And for most of the year, they get watered once a week, once every 2 weeks. In maybe July, August, September, I do water them probably twice a week with drip. And the drip is a very slow drip. I think it's a 1/4 gallon per hour, and it's on for about a half an hour. So they don't get much water at all, and they do totally fine with that. You can tell when a lavender plant needs water because it will start to turn a little more gray. The leaves will kind of shrivel a little bit, and you can water them at that point, maybe a little before then, but they're going to tell you when they need water, and they're going to not tell you when they've got too much water until they've practically just died. So keep them on the dry side. Always err on too dry rather than too wet. So that's pretty much it. A full day in the Mediterranean herb garden. Wasn't planning on that, but we did get them planted. We got everything trimmed up and nice, so they should all be fine all throughout the winter. And then they'll probably need another pruning early summer, I would say. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Hope you learned something. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, or sharing it with a friend, and I'll see you next time.